Hello and welcome back to our YouTube channel. Last week we started a brand new science unit about reptiles, and we've had a series of videos where I've taught you about a different type of reptile and showed you some of my own personal pet reptiles. So today is going to be the last one of those videos, which is kind of sad, but I hope you've been enjoying them because I've sure been enjoying making them. Today we're going to be learning about boa constrictors. So boa constrictors are a type of snake. And boa constrictors is kind of a broad or big term because there's lots of different kinds of boa constrictors. They call different kinds of boa constrictors different localities because they're from different places. And they would also say that there's different species of boa constrictors. Now I have two different kinds of boa constrictors, and I'm going to be showing both of them to you today. But what's interesting about boa constrictors is, like I said, there's lots of different kinds and they come from lots of different places, and depending on the place is going to kind of depend on how high their temperature they need and how high of humidity or moisture in the air that they need. So before we go any further, I'm going to show you my first boa constrictor. Now this type of boa constrictor is called a hog island boa constrictor. Hog Island boa constrictors are found in one place in the wild, and that's in some small islands off of the country Honduras, and the islands are called the Cayos Cochinos. So this here is a Hog Island boa constrictor. Boa constrictors are constrictor snakes. We talked about what that meant in the first video with ball pythons. That means that they constrict or squeeze to eat their food instead of biting them and having venom shoot out into them. So boa constrictors, of course, are not venomous. Otherwise, I wouldn't have one. So this is a Hog Island boa constrictor. They look a lot like the regular type boa constrictors you would see that get really big, except they're a little bit lighter. So she's kind of a more peachy or light pink color. So this is a girl, her name is Moxie. We'll try to focus on her face. Now boa constrictors, regular boa constrictors, can get really big. They can get up to 8 or 9 feet long. That's probably as tall as from like your floor to your ceiling in your house. That's really big. Now Moxie's a Hog Island boa, which is kind of a dwarf species of boa, which means that she's not going to get as big as regular boa constrictors. She's probably going to get about 6 feet long and probably about as big around as a softball. So she's probably going to be my biggest snake when she's all grown up. Either her or my other boa constrictor. I'm not sure which one will be bigger. Typically girl snakes get a little bit bigger than boy snakes, so there's a fun fact for you, and that's true in boa constrictors. So she will get a little bit bigger than a boy Hog Island would. Something cool about Hog Island boa coloring is they have kind of speckles, and then they have kind of a tail pattern that gets kind of red at the bottom, kind of like a red tail boa constrictor. You may have heard of those, but that type gets really big, like the ones I was talking about before. Moxie will be a big snake, but not super big. I'll always be able to handle her safely by myself. All right, so let's move on and start talking a little bit about boa constrictors. Where are they from? Boa constrictors are found in Central and South America mostly. So once you go down past Mexico into Central America, into countries like Honduras and Ecuador, and then down into South America, countries like Brazil and Colombia and Peru, places like that are where you would find boa constrictors in the wild. My boa constrictors never were in the wild. They were born in captivity. That's the opposite of the wild. So they were born to snake breeders, and their parents were pets, and now they are pets. So Moxie here is from Honduras, and my other boa constrictor is actually from Brazil. I'll talk a little bit more about her later when I pull her out. What do they eat? That's something important to talk about. Like most snakes, in captivity, the opposite of the wild, as pets, boa constrictors eat rodents like mice and rats. Right now, Moxie's a baby, so she's eating kind of small mice, like baby mice, and as she grows, she'll actually eat big rats someday. But right now, she's eating mice. In the wild, different types of boa constrictors might eat different things. Some might eat lizards in the wild, some might eat small birds. Even, another fun fact for you, anacondas are a type of boa constrictor. And they get super big, and they eat some different things than a boa constrictor like a Hog Island boa would eat. So it just depends on the species or type of boa constrictor too, about what they eat. All right, and what kind of environment do they like? This again depends on the type of boa constrictor and where they're from. Moxie from Honduras, as a Hog Island boa, she likes her humidity around 60 to 70%. So her moisture in the air is kind of high, but not super high. And their temperature kind of varies between 80 to 90 degrees, depending on where they're from. Moxie's from a little bit of a hotter place, so she likes her temperatures in the high 80s to low 90s. And some other important things, boa constrictors are typically semi-arboreal. Arboreal means that they like to be in trees, and semi-arboreal means that they like to be in trees, but not super high in trees. So you won't find them super high in the branches, but they might be in some of the lower branches closer to the ground. So they do like to climb, but not way up into the tippy tops of trees. A lot of boa constrictors come from the jungle or live in the jungle in the wild. And boa constrictors in the jungle, if you think about trees in the jungle, they can get really big and tall, and you would never find these guys way super high up in those trees. You'd find them kind of in the lower bottom of the trees. And then lastly, they need places to hide and climb. So that's true in the wild, and that's true as pets as well. So she has some like vines in her enclosure and places to hide, and as she gets bigger, she'll get like to be 6 feet long, so she'll need a lot bigger enclosure, and I'll definitely have like branches and things for her to climb on as she gets bigger too. Right now she's still a little baby. She's almost a year old. She'll turn a year old in a month or two. So this is Moxie the Hog Island boa constrictor. Now it's hard to pick a favorite snake because I have quite a few, but I'll say that Moxie is my favorite snake. And one reason I really like her is because she's really gentle and really sweet. I also think it's cool she has a black tongue. I don't know if you can see in the camera. But also something interesting, which I'm surprised she hasn't done yet in the video, is whenever I hold her, she likes to kind of climb up on me and get in my face and climb in my glasses. She especially likes to get kind of up in my hair and sit in my hair too, because they do like to climb. But she's a snake. I wouldn't worry about her by my face at all. She's super friendly. So yeah, this is Moxie. Now I'm going to show you the other boa constrictor, which is a completely different type and needs a little bit of different care because they're from a different place in the wild. All right, here is my second boa constrictor. This is a Brazilian Rainbow Boa, and her name is Rowan. She's a girl. Brazilian Rainbow Boas are normally from Brazil or Colombia, countries in South America right around there. They typically live in the jungle, so they need really high humidity, and they need a little bit lower of a temperature than other boa constrictors. I mentioned with Moxie, the Hog Island boa, that she needs temperatures in like the high 80s and low 90s, but Rowan here, the Brazilian Rainbow Boa, they need a little bit lower temperatures, so they need in like the low 80s would be an ideal temperature for them. They need really high humidity. Other boa constrictors like the Hog Island or regular boa constrictors can do really well in humidity around 60 to 70%. But rainbow boas, they actually need super high humidity at like 90%. Especially babies, they can even have humidity like 95%. So that's super wet. Their enclosure needs to be really wet at all times. Otherwise they can get really sick and even pass away because they get really dehydrated. So one thing I have in her enclosure, I have it right here to show you. This is just like a regular Tupperware that I've cut a hole in the side so that she can go in. The reason it's a Tupperware is because it holds humidity really well, but then it's full of moss inside. So I wet and spray down that moss every single day so that it stays really wet. And most of the time that she's in her enclosure, you can find her in that moss box. I don't know if you can see her little face. Brazilian Rainbow Boas also have black tongues. They've got that eye pattern on the side, and the reason why they're called Rainbow Boas is because it's easier to see in the sunlight, which I don't have any natural sunlight in this room I'm in. But if you were to shine a light on her, you would see that she gets like rainbow sheen, like almost an iridescence on her scales, and it looks beautiful. I'll try to see if I can include any footage or a picture of what Rainbow Boas look like when they have that rainbow sheen on them. So this is Rowan. She's actually my newest snake, and she's not super tame yet. You wouldn't be able to tell because she's actually doing really well right now, but she's a baby and she's not really used to being held by humans very much yet. Rainbow Boas as babies tend to be a little bit nippy. They can bite a little bit as they get used to being held. She has tried to kind of strike at me before, but she hasn't actually bitten me. But that's to be expected with baby Rainbow Boas. So they're not really recommended for first-time snake owners because they can be nippy as babies, but with regular handling like this, they tame down and are supposed to be very calm adults. I have to be honest with you, my other snakes never really tried to bite at all, so that made me a little nervous at first, but as you can see, she's doing really well getting used to be handled. So I'm super happy with her. She's really beautiful. But yeah. So you might be wondering, okay, little Rowan is a baby. How big is she going to get? She's going to be around as big as what I mentioned Moxie would be. So she's a type of boa constrictor that's probably going to be around 6, maybe 7 feet long. But she's not going to be super big around. She'll probably be as big around as a baseball at her very thickest point, but skinnier than that at most of her points. So she won't seem as big as some snakes that are thicker than that. But yes, this is my Brazilian Rainbow Boa. I've wanted a Brazilian Rainbow Boa for a long time, so I'm really glad to have her, and I can't wait until she gets a little more tame and easier to handle, and I hope you enjoyed seeing her. Now I'm going to show you her and Moxie's enclosures, and then you can see kind of what all my snake enclosures look like. I showed you what my crested gecko and my blue-tongued skink enclosure look like, but I haven't showed you any of my snake enclosures yet. And they all kind of look the same, although some are more moist than others. And Rowan's has this moss hide in there, which my other snakes don't have because they don't need as high of humidity. But otherwise, they kind of look the same. They all have a source of heat. They all have some kind of wood chips in the bottom. They all have like a vine to climb on, a water dish, and places to hide. This here is called a snake rack, and this is what I keep my snakes in when they're babies. It kind of looks like a shelf or a cabinet of some sort, and it has these drawers that pull out, and they're really cool snake racks because if you see, it's plugged into the wall right here, and then I have it set up to a thermostat, and then in the inside and the back there's heat panels that are set to the temperature that I put in the thermostat so that it stays at a certain temperature that the snakes need. Now I have the boa constrictor Moxie in here. I have the ball python Santana that I showed you guys the other day in here, and I have the Brazilian Rainbow Boa Rowan in here. And the one in the bottom is actually empty right now. But yeah, this snake rack won't last them forever. It's good while they're babies, and then when they're bigger, they'll be in a bigger enclosure. Okay, so when I pull out one of these drawers of the snake rack, this is typically what it looks like inside. This is like the bedding. It's like coconut bark. And if you see, there's condensation because that's the humidity keeping it moist. In the back, I have a little, this is a humidity gauge and temperature gauge. So the humidity is at 67% and 86 degrees. That's perfect for my Hog Island boa here. Typically inside a snake rack, there will be a place for them to hide in the back. The heat is in the back of the rack. There will be a place for them to hide in the front where it's a little bit cooler. There will be some sort of vines for them to climb on, and a water bowl. And the size of the water bowl depends on how much humidity the snake needs. So the Brazilian Rainbow Boa has a lot bigger water dish. Now again, an enclosure like this is probably good for a year or two, and then when the snake starts getting bigger, then they'll need something a lot bigger to be in. But I'm betting you that Moxie is under here. Let's take a look. Nope, she tricked me. All right, so she must be in the one in the front. Let's see. Let me move all this vine. Yep, there she is. Let's see. Here's the little boa. And here is where Rowan lives. She has a much bigger water bowl because she needs more humidity. She's got the vines. Here's her moss box. Actually just looked and she's underneath right now, so there she is. Since I just had her out, she hasn't gone back in her moss yet. And then back here is her humidity gauge. You see she has a lot higher humidity, 99% in her temperature. It's around, it says 78, but usually it says around 80. It might be because I had her drawer open. So yeah, that's where the two boa constrictors live. All right, thank you very much for tuning in to our YouTube channel. I hope you've really enjoyed learning about different kinds of reptiles and learning about boa constrictors today. What you're going to do now is you're going to fill out the page on what you learned about boa constrictors. And tomorrow we're going to start a really cool project about reptiles where you get to choose your own reptile and kind of do a project on them, a little bit of research and kind of a craft or art activity to go with it. I hope you all have a great day and we'll see you soon. Bye-bye. Say bye, Rowan.